do it myself. Well, good morning, or rather good afternoon. I was honored and pleased to brief the UN Security Council today on EU-UN Partnership. This is an exercise I do every year. As every year, on this day, the 9th of May, we celebrate Europe's Day. It's not by coincidence that this year the two things happen at the same time, because we wanted together, we decided together to celebrate in the same moment the European Union, our 60 years of peace and democracy in our continent, and the EU-UN Partnership in the word partnership and friendship, if I can be very frank. This is because the European Union and the United Nations share a lot, share the same values, share somehow also the same history, because we were both born out of the ashes of the most dramatic conflict in our history. We share the same objectives of peace, democracy, human rights, rule of law, sustainable development. We share the same philosophy, if I can say so, the same approach to multilateralism, to cooperation in the world. It's what I refer to as the European way to foreign and security policy, and it's what all Security Council members refer to also as a model for many in the world, and also as the United Nations way, the search for win-win cooperations and avoiding or preventing any kind of confrontation. This is why the European Union and the United Nations work together very closely every single day on all our common priorities. I can list a few, but the list would be very long. Sustainable development, peacekeeping, conflict prevention, mediation, climate change, humanitarian aid, global partnerships for managing refugees and migration movements, counterterrorism, maritime security, human rights, gender equality, and many crises around our world, where the UN and the European Union work daily together, from Syria to Libya, from DPRK to Afghanistan, from Somalia to Mali to the Central African Republic, and I could go on. So it's a natural partnership, it's a natural friendship that we decided, starting from our relation, partnership and friendship with the United Nations Secretary General, to strengthen even more in these difficult times. The European Union is very well aware of its global role that all UN Security Council members stressed, recognizing the European Union as a major global player. So we are aware of our global role. We are aware that this brings global responsibilities and the necessity for us to live up to the expectations not only of the European citizens, but also of the expectations and needs of our partners. Now and in the future, the European Union will stay a global, reliable, cooperative partner for the United Nations and for our friends in the world. Now and in the future, I know the Brexit negotiations are floating around in the room and everywhere in the world, but I think we made it very clear, and it is recognized from our partners. The European Union is and will stay the global partner the UN needs, as the first humanitarian donor, the first investor in development cooperation. Together, we invest in humanitarian and development more than the rest of the world combined, and we will continue to do so even when we will be 27. We will continue to be the first contributor to peacekeeping worldwide, the first trading partner for most countries in the world, the first biggest single market in the world, even without the UK, and the second largest economy. So the European Union is here to stay. We recommitted in the 60th anniversary of our history to staying together and grow together as a reliable, predictable, cooperative, indispensable partner for the United Nations and for the entire world, especially important in times of uncertainty as the ones we're living. So this is what we focused on in the Security Council this morning, in a very long, substantial, fruitful meeting with the UN Secretary General yesterday, and I'm looking forward to welcoming him next week in Strasbourg, where we will address the European Parliament, but we will also be together actually tomorrow already in London for the Somalia conference. So as you see, the daily work is literally daily. The message we're bringing is that the European Union is there to support the Secretary General and also the Security Council in their daily work to strengthen the UN system, as we see in the UN system the best investment in multilateralism and in our own security and prosperity.
Thank you. Madam Mogherini, you mentioned the Iran nuclear deal in your remarks. The U.S. administration is currently doing a review of the deal. You mentioned that it now belongs to the entire international community. Is that a message specifically to the Trump administration, and what is your message specifically to the Trump administration?
I don't need to send messages in a bottle. We talk often and very openly and very well. In this month, I've visited Washington twice. I've met Tillerson, but also Vice President Pence several times, McMaster, Mattis. We have open regular channels, and we discuss of all the different files we have on our common priority list, including Iran, the implementation, the full implementation of the nuclear deal, but also the regional role that Iran is playing, especially in some of the crises that are key to us, from Syria to Yemen. I have stressed directly to the US administration the fact that the European Union is extremely interested and committed to the full implementation of the JCPOA. This means by all, in all parts. We are monitoring very closely through our presidency of the Joint Commission on the full implementation of the Iranian nuclear commitments that have been monitored and verified and confirmed for 5 times since the entry into force of the agreement by the AEA. And we are equally committed to all the other implications and commitments that all other partners and international community has done, especially the sanctions related to nuclear activities. So the European Union is firmly behind the deal, as also is the rest of the international community, as I believe you have heard also this morning.
Yes. Madam Mogherini, thank you for this press conference. What weight can the EU bring to both the Geneva process as well as to the Astana process in order to try to end Syria's civil war? Because obviously, without an end to the civil war, the EU countries are still facing a very, very massive refugee crisis.
Let me say that the work we're doing on the Syrian crisis, first of all, is strictly coordinated, strongly coordinated with the UN and with the UN Special Envoy. I talked to him just yesterday. I very much welcome his decision to resume talks in Geneva next week. I believe that, especially in the aftermath of the last Astana meeting, it is important that the focus is now put on the intra-Syrian political talks in Geneva, and the weight that the European Union is bringing to that political work under the UN leadership is supporting the Syrians to engage constructively on a political transition, on a political solution that could benefit the entire country. That is why in the Brussels conference last month, we not only mobilized humanitarian support, but we also started to look at what the international community and the European Union can do, and the region, for the reconstruction of the country, for the reconciliation processes and the stabilization process. There is a lot for the Syrians to gain out of a peace deal. And I believe the Syrian parties should now demonstrate in Geneva the readiness to find their own political solution to the crisis, and the international community will gather to support this path. Every time I meet Syrians, those living inside Syria still and those that are not living inside Syria anymore but want to go back, they just tell me one thing, that they don't want to see their country at war anymore. They want to go back, they want to reconstruct their country in an inclusive, democratic, non-sectarian manner. And this is the only agenda the European Union has. And believe me, we do this for the Syrians, not because we are facing refugee waves that, by the way, other countries in the region are facing more dramatically than we are doing. For us, the key point is solving the crisis because it's a major humanitarian disaster, it's a major security threat to the region, and we see the peace dividends as something that could benefit all the Syrians, all the region, and all the international community.
Good afternoon, Madam Mogherini. After the result of the presidential election in France, what are the next steps that to take to strengthen the European Union?
You know, 1 year ago, or 10, 11 months ago, many were saying that the referendum in the UK would have been the beginning of the end for the European Union. And I think that in this last 10, 11 months, the European Union has proven its strength, has proven its determination to continue. We would have loved to continue at 28 or even more, because we are engaged with many of our neighbors in the Balkans in particular on accession talks and negotiations, so we're serious about that. We cannot go on at 28 for the democratic will expressed by the British citizens. We will continue at 27 in Rome on the 25th of March. I've seen an incredible determination to recommit to going on together. And I think that in the recent elections all over the European Union, you have seen the same determination. It's clear to me that Europeans have now focused on what there is to lose, and on the fact that what can sound attractive in an electoral speech might become scary if it turns reality, and that when they face the reality of political choices, as they do through elections, they know what to choose. We've seen it in the elections in the Netherlands, in Austria for the president, in France. And what I see every single day in my work with the European Council in different formations is a strong determination of the 27 and still of the 28 for those issues on which we continue to work together, because the UK is still a member state till the end of the negotiations. I see a strong determination of the 27 to work together to deliver for our citizens and for our partners in the world.
Last question, Kahraman.
Thank you, Madam Mogherini. I have actually two short questions. One is about
So I can choose which one
humanitarian situation on Syrians. What is the EU doing financially to shoulder the responsibility or share the responsibility with the neighboring countries of Syria? If I may do the second, there have been concerns in the country I come from, Turkey, that some EU countries have been protecting members of the organization that committed a coup attempt in Turkey. What is the policy of the EU as a whole? Thank you very much.
You have the right to ask two questions. I have the right to choose which one I answer to. It's a fair deal. By the way, I will meet the Minister for European Union of Turkey, my good friend Omar Çelik, tomorrow morning in Brussels. So I'll discuss with him many different things concerning our bilateral relations. The European Union is the major, by far, the major humanitarian donor for Syria. Both inside Syria and in the region. We have mobilized, now I'm calling for help on the numbers, 6 billion euros, thanks, 6 billion euros since the beginning of the crisis, on humanitarian only. I stress, both inside Syria, we have a humanitarian office still in Damascus, we have another one, as you know probably very well, operating from Gaziantep. And we are working especially through the UN channels and international NGOs to deliver humanitarian aid. This is why, linked to the question you put forward before, we hope that the steps forward that were taken in Astana recently would open the way for real access all over Syria to humanitarian aid. This is an urgency we have to be able to bring humanitarian aid in all areas that need it, regardless of any political considerations. So we are delivering aid inside Syria and in all the neighboring countries, in particular, as you know well, Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon. The European Union is and stays committed to that. Priority for us is especially education of children, as we risk to have a lost generation that would have enormous implications for the reconstruction of the country, for the future of Syria, for the future of the region, but also for security in the region, because every single child that doesn't go to school today is much more exposed to the risk of radicalization tomorrow. So it's a priority for us. It's a humanitarian priority, but it's also political and security priority. And we will continue to support Syrians. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll see you next time.